The Drekker did not conquer worlds. They erased them. Across the galaxy, they arrived in obsidian ships shaped like blades, silent and final. The invasion never started with a warning. One moment, your sky was yours. The next, it bled. Cities were vaporized in coordinated planetary strikes. Civilizations that had stood for millennia became glass. The Drekker didn't occupy. They exterminated, recorded it, then moved on. When they discovered Earth, it wasn't planned. A patrol fleet chasing a fleeing rebel ship detected a subspace anomaly near Sol. What they found was a pale blue buzzing with electromagnetic chatter, still running on fossil fuels, oblivious to the stars. To the Drekker, humanity was noise, crude, emotional, biologically inferior, not even worth assimilation. But protocol demanded sterilization. Within 2 weeks, they darkened Earth's moon with warships. Atmospheric suppression fields shut down satellites. Global infrastructure collapsed before anyone knew who the enemy was. EMP cyclones crippled communication. Missiles fired blindly. Nuclear weapons launched and disappeared in Drekker antimatter fields before impact. The resistance wasn't a war, it was a panic. In 3 days, the Pentagon, Kremlin, and Zongnanhai turned to rubble. By the 7th day, coordinated defense was gone. Entire nations ceased to exist. Major population centers were targeted for precision strikes. Drones swept the ruins to catalog the dead. Earth was a dying echo. But then something happened. In northern Canada, a Drekker recon unit lost contact. 10 warriors, each one capable of gutting a tank, vanished. Surveillance footage showed only static, broken frames, and a final still image. A shadow standing among corpses, eyes glowing faint in the infrared. High Command dismissed it as equipment failure. They sent another team. They never returned. Across different zones, scatter reports followed the same pattern. Units went dark. No bodies found. Heat signatures abruptly vanished mid-patrol. One squad's feed was recovered briefly. It showed a figure, covered in scavenged armor, moving like smoke through snow-covered terrain. No uniform, no insignia. But he fought with tactics beyond human military standards. The Drekker Council flagged the anomaly for analysis. Data suggested a pattern. Kill zones were calculated, precise and psychological. Corpses left in deliberate positions. Some displayed, some desecrated. Messages carved in bone or burned into Drekker steel with scavenged plasma torches. You invaded the wrong species. On the 12th day, a transmission was intercepted. It originated from deep within a forest in the Pacific Northwest. Shortwave frequency, analog, old tech. The message was looped, repeating, "I am still here." The Drekker labeled it insignificant. Earth was no longer a battlefield. It was cleanup. But then a command cruiser hovering over what used to be Chicago exploded midair. Its anti-grav engines were rigged to overload. The ship crashed into the ruins, flattening 5 city blocks. Autopsy of black box data revealed unauthorized access from inside the ship. No trace of the intruder, just one signature, a military patch embedded into the control panel, soaked in blood. It belonged to a U.S. Special Operations officer listed Kia 5 years ago. Colonel Marcus Wren. Drekker intelligence scrubbed Earth's remaining databases. Wren was once a Black Ops commander during the African bio crisis. Known for brutal efficiency, psychological manipulation, and extreme survivability. Rumors swirled about his discharge after a forbidden mission in the Amazon. Decommissioned was the official word. Ghosted. Now he was back. And he was killing them. Not in open war, but in shadows. Supply lines sabotaged. Landing pads rigged with traps made from Drekker limbs. Drones captured and repurposed. Feeding false maps into command grid. Biological attacks infected key officers. Engineered from Earth's own viruses, mutated into weapons Drekker immunities couldn't detect. Drekker troopers began requesting reassignment away from Earth. Officers noticed a rising trend: paranoia, hesitation, uncharacteristic fear. A species engineered for obedience was afraid. Fear wasn't in their design. Until now, a war priest among the Drekker uttered a forbidden phrase during a council meeting. They've awakened their deathless. The phrase took root. Across the occupied zones, soldiers whispered of the human shadow, the butcher silence, the ice walker. One unit refused to disembark after landing. They locked their ship and demanded immediate extraction. Command sent a disciplined squad. When they broke into the ship, they found every crew member dead. No wounds, no resistance. Poison. The ship's lights flickered a phrase in Morse code. I was here first. Drekker protocol shifted. No longer was Earth a passive zone. A kill order was issued from Marcus Wren. Every available unit was to converge on known activity zones. Scan for irregular thermal signatures. Deploy war beasts. Use biological sweeps. In Alaska, 300 Drekker stormed an abandoned U.S. naval base. They tracked Wren's movements to a sealed bunker system deep underground. They moved in. 1 hour later, their command signal disappeared. No feed, no reply. 2 drones deployed afterward relayed corrupted footage. Smoke, fire, shrieking noises, then silence. The last visual, Wren, standing on a balcony above the flames, looking directly into the drone. He raised a middle finger, smiled, and vanished into the smoke. The video was leaked, not by humans, by the Drekker. The council debated emergency escalation, but something unthinkable occurred. Multiple lower-ranked battalions refused Earth deployment. Others faked injuries. A Drekker commander executed his own men when they tried to flee. That night, someone hacked into their command comms. A simple voice recording played on every channel. You wanted war. This is personal. And for the first time in Drekker history, a unit mutinied. They weren't afraid of Earth. They were afraid of one man. Wren didn't raise armies. He didn't command fleets. He weaponized the one thing the Drekker never evolved for: fear. Not death. Not pain. Fear. Because for the Drekker, death was honorable. But being hunted, broken, humiliated by a single chaotic, defiant human, that was unacceptable. But it was happening. And he wasn't finished. Colonel Marcus Wren didn't fight like a soldier. He hunted like a ghost. By the time the Drekker Empire labeled him a Class 9 threat entity, their most elite units had already bled for it. Earth's surface was scarred with Drekker tech, melted cities, and craters where resistance once stood. But in the northern wilds, something else thrived. Wren was the last breath of a dying species, and he had no interest in winning a war. He wanted them to suffer. He never stayed in one place longer than a day. His base, whatever ruins he could repurpose. His armor, salvage plating from Drekker corpses, modified with human ingenuity. Insulated with scavenged polymers, camouflaged with mud and blood. His weapons, anything that could kill, sharpen rebar, reprogram drones, proximity mines crafted from Drekker power cells. It wasn't just resourceful, it was humiliating. His first large-scale strike was the Arctic siege. The Drekker had established a forward command base beneath the polar ice cap, reinforced, shielded, protected by autonomous sentries and war beasts bred for cold warfare. They assumed no human could survive in those conditions. Wren did more than survive. He transformed the environment into his weapon. The Drekker received a distress beacon 3 days after the base stopped responding. A recon team entered and found a frozen tomb. Their soldiers had suffocated when oxygen vents were overridden. Sentries turned inward, beast pens unlocked. The floor was slick with blood and frost. In the central chamber, someone had etched words into the command console with a Drekker claw: adapt or die. Wren's next move was psychological. He began broadcasting distorted messages across Drekker frequencies. Not words, memories, screams. Human voices, some real, some faked, crying, pleading, laughing. The audio shifted in pitch and cadence, warping into patterns that disrupted Drekker neurological rhythms. Whole squads reported dizziness, hallucinations, and neural degradation. Command attempted to trace the source. Every time they got close, the signal moved. Sometimes it was relayed through scavenged Drekker comms. Sometimes it pulsed through old Earth satellites they thought were disabled. They underestimated human persistence. They underestimated him. Soon after, a dropship crashed in what was once Montana. The wreckage revealed no mechanical failure. Flight logs showed the pilots screaming in a language unknown to Drekker systems. Burned into the ship's hull was a makeshift emblem. 2 crossbones and a cracked Drekker helmet. Wren had become a brand of terror. By the 20th day, Command authorized the assembly of an elite Drekker kill squad. The Maulborn, 12 genetically enhanced soldiers, each the veteran of 100 planetary purges. They were dispatched to track, trap, and exterminate Wren. He didn't run. He lured them. They entered the Canadian Rockies, tracking false heat trails planted by Wren. Body parts frozen, and left to mimic his biological signature. The Maulborn followed the signals into a gorge. Then the gorge exploded. Charges set into the cliffs triggered a rock slide, splitting the team. One half buried, the other ambushed. They engaged, but the terrain wasn't neutral. It was his hunting ground. Wren fought with a level of unpredictability that broke Drekker combat protocols. He blinded them with powdered glass, hacked their armor feedback loops to induce seizures, and used their own screamers, devices meant to incapacitate humans, turned against them with reverse polarity. The last Maulborn died on a spike fashioned from a Drekker war beast's rib, impaled and left dangling over a pass, carved into his chest plate. Send more. Drekker morale plummeted. Lower officers began fabricating reports to avoid being stationed on Earth. Disobedience spread, not because Wren was winning battles, but because every Drekker soldier knew, deep down, they could be next. No one wanted patrol alone. No one wanted to be the next one who just vanished. Command responded with desperation. They began firebombing entire forests, leveling old ruins, destroying anything Wren might use. But he was always ahead. He let them exhaust their fuel. He let them burn everything. Then, from the ashes, he struck again. A Drekker processing center in what used to be Colorado was repurposed to house human captives, survivors being studied for resistance traits. One night, the guards found their command logs erased, surveillance systems fried, internal comms disabled. Then came the gas, a modified aerosol distributed through the air vents, non-lethal to humans, paralyzed Drekker neural functions instantly. Wren walked through the halls in silence, slitting throats one by one. He freed the captives, handed them weapons, and disappeared before reinforcement arrived. He didn't just kill, he saved. He reminded the scattered remnants of humanity that someone still fought. That's when they began to believe in him. Scavenger bands and militia cells started painting his emblem on their gear. Resistance groups were formed, not centralized, but inspired. They used his tactics: unpredictability, sabotage, psychological pressure. Every human strike was now signed with a crude W burned into Drekker metal. The Drekker started losing control, not of Earth, but of their troops. Internal investigations uncovered that some Drekker soldiers were beginning to question the war. They had never known fear, but Wren had infected them with it, not through propaganda, not through speeches, but through experience. Each loss chipped away at the myth of their invincibility. And then came the breach. Drekker Orbital Station Falgrath 9, positioned above Earth for high-orbit surveillance, went dark for 11 minutes. Just enough time for someone to slice into their system, download sector command protocols, and plant a virus. When control was regained, the station's cameras caught only one thing before blackout: a human figure in a stolen Drekker exosuit, giving a slow salute. High Command now faced a nightmare scenario. Wren wasn't just killing their soldiers. He was breaking their foundation, their faith in dominance, their control over fear, their belief that no species could match their superiority. He shattered it with every move. He was no longer a man. He was a myth, a virus in their minds, a lesson whispered across bunkers and trenches. One human is too many, and Wren was still alive, still out there, watching, waiting, turning their every step into a mistake they wouldn't live long enough to regret. The Drekker Empire unleashed its most advanced weaponry and ruthless tactics in a final bid to crush Marcus Wren. Entire battle groups descended on the Pacific Northwest, a vast wilderness where Wren had been spotted moving like a phantom. But what the Drekker called Advanced technology became their undoing. Wren had spent weeks turning Earth's natural landscape into a labyrinth of death traps. Satellite data showed endless miles of booby-trapped forests, deep tunnels lined with explosives, and electronic jammers crafted from scavenged alien tech that blinded Drekker sensors. The invaders found themselves caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse, where every step could be their last. Despite their superior strength and weaponry, the Drekker forces started to suffer catastrophic losses. Automated defense systems became Trojan horses. Drones were hacked and redirected against their own. Patrols vanished without a trace, only to reappear days later with shredded armor and missing parts. The psychological warfare was relentless. A captured Drekker soldier described what happened during one skirmish. They saw something, an invisible shadow, moving faster than their sensors could track. Our weapons failed. Our comrades screamed, then silence. It was as if the forest itself fought for him. The Drekker High Command grew desperate. They deployed their war beasts, bioengineered monstrosities bred for terror and destruction. These creatures were said to be unstoppable, capable of tearing through steel and flesh alike. But in the wilds, they became prey. One such beast was found dead, its throat ripped open, and its innards arranged in a symbol, a human handprint smeared in Drekker blood. Wren used the environment to his advantage, leading the beast into pits lined with spikes, collapsing tunnels on them, and using fire to drive them into traps. Then came the most audacious strike, the assault on Drekker Command Center, Obsidian Spire, a fortress built within a dormant volcano. It was the heart of Drekker operations on Earth, heavily fortified and bristling with defenses. The Drekker expected a full frontal assault. Instead, they found the gates blown wide open from inside. Wren's forces had infiltrated the fortress through a forgotten network of caves beneath the volcano, long mapped and exploited by human survivalists. Once inside, Wren's fighters disabled shields and communications, cutting off the command tower from reinforcements. Inside the spire, chaos erupted. Elite Drekker soldiers fought desperately to contain the breach. Wren's team, small but lethal, moved swiftly, sabotaging power conduits, setting time explosives, and hacking data cores. Surveillance footage captured moments of brutal hand-to-hand combat. Drekker officers fell to weapons jury-rigged from Earth's scavenged parts. Wren himself was nowhere to be seen, but his presence was felt everywhere. Every corridor bore the scars of his tactics, trapdoors, tripwires, and messages etched into walls with Drekker blood. Humans never quit. The destruction culminated in a massive explosion that rocked the volcano's interior. The Obsidian Spire collapsed, killing hundreds of Drekker soldiers and obliterating critical infrastructure. The loss was a staggering blow to their occupation efforts. In the aftermath, the Drekker declared Earth an ungovernable zone. Their forces withdrew to orbital positions, relying on remote strikes and drones. But Wren did not stop. He shifted tactics, focusing on disrupting supply lines and communication satellites. The human resistance was energized. Inspired by Wren's successes, more survivors joined the fight. What began as isolated pockets of defiance grew into coordinated strikes across the globe. Humans armed with salvaged Drekker tech launched guerrilla attacks, sabotaging enemy resources and stealing intelligence. The Drekker realized the true danger wasn't Wren alone. It was what he represented, the indomitable spirit of humanity, refusing to be extinguished. It was a psychological weapon far deadlier than plasma rifles or war beasts. Fear permeated the Drekker ranks. The invincible conquerors had become hunted. Paranoia spread. Trust eroded. The empire that had raised 1,000 worlds now trembled before a single human. Wren's legend spread not just among humans, but within Drekker soldiers themselves. They whisper about the human who moved like a shadow, struck without warning, and vanished like smoke. A symbol of resistance that no technology or weapon could destroy. The strongest alien empire in the galaxy feared one human. Not because he was the most powerful, but because he was impossible, the embodiment of hope, defiance, and the unyielding will survive. The Drekker Empire's fear of Marcus Wren transformed from tactical concern into existential dread. They began questioning everything they believed about conquest and supremacy. The galaxy's most feared species found themselves unprepared for a phenomenon they couldn't analyze or predict, a human spirit that thrived under pressure, fueled by sheer unpredictability and resilience. As Drekker fleets regrouped, internal reports revealed an alarming pattern. Units stationed on Earth showed signs of psychological collapse. Some commanders openly doubted victory. Mutinies were no longer isolated incidents, but spreading like wildfire. The Empire's rigid hierarchy, built on discipline and order, started to crumble under the weight of this invisible enemy. Ren wasn't just a soldier, he was a symbol. Wherever his emblem appeared, Drekker morale plummeted. Entire garrisons surrendered without resistance rather than face the human who stalked them in their nightmares. Soldiers confessed they felt hunted, not by a force, but by a ghost. The council convened in emergency sessions. The usual protocol was to send overwhelming force, annihilate the threat, and move on. But Ren was never in one place long enough. The usual tactics failed repeatedly. The council debated sending their most feared assassin, the Vorash, a creature rumored to be unstoppable, but even he refused deployment without reinforcements. The galaxy watched with bated breath. The strongest empire was faltering. Rumors spread to other civilizations. An empire brought low by a single human. For many, it was a cautionary tale. For humans, a beacon of hope. Ren, meanwhile, remained elusive. Reports confirmed he was alive after attacks that should have ended him. His survival was almost mythical. Some whispered he had transcended flesh, becoming an unstoppable force born from Earth itself. Behind the scenes, Ren worked tirelessly to unite scattered human factions. He forged fragile alliances, turning former enemies into brothers in arms. His vision was clear. Reclaim Earth, then push beyond, proving humanity was not just a footnote in the galaxy's history, but a rising storm. The final message from Ren was broadcast on every frequency the Drekker used, a chilling, simple statement repeated over and over. You came to destroy us. You found only the beginning. And in the silence that followed, the Drekker realized the truth. The strongest alien empire feared one human, not because of his strength alone, but because he embodied the indomitable will of a species that refused to die. That one human was a living reminder that some wars aren't won by weapons, they're won by the spirit. And Marcus Ren was the spark that would ignite humanity's rise.